Welcome to the One Gang Worldwide podcast, your ultimate ride into the world of motorcycles. Visit cyclesworldwide.com where we offer a completely free marketplace for everything motorcycles. Join our One Gang community where you can connect, share info, and swap stories with riders from all over the world. Join for free at cyclesworldwide.com and be a part of the One Gang community right now. On today's episode of the One Gang Worldwide podcast, we're honored to have Marilyn Stemp, co-founder of IronWorks Magazine and editor of Sturgis Rider Daily. Marilyn is a pillar of motorcycle journalism, having spent decades covering the beats of culture, innovation, and community within the biking world. Marilyn will share her experiences from years of motorcycle journalism, discuss the evolution of motorcycle media, and explore the future of motorcycling in the digital age. Whether you're a motorcycle enthusiast, a budding journalist, or someone interested in the stories behind the ride, Marilyn's insights are bound to captivate and enlighten. So let's gear up to discover the stories and shifts in motorcycling with Marilyn Stemp, right here on the One Gang podcast.
I get desensitized by headlines. You know, you think you know what's happening because you've read a headline, but there's a place for longer form journalism, and I think people will stay with the story when it has some meaning or some impact, or, you know, they can relate to it in some fashion.
One Gang Worldwide podcast, brought to you by Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping. Since 1978, Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping has been the trusted name in transporting motorcycles safely across the country. With custom designed pallets and air ride trailers, your bike is secure and protected every step of the way. By choosing Keyboard Motorcycle Shipping, you're supporting a dedicated small business that prioritizes quality and customer satisfaction. Ship with a peace of mind, knowing your motorcycle is in expert hands. Now, let's dive into today's episode.
So today on the One Gang Worldwide podcast, we're welcoming the mighty Marilyn Stemp. We are grateful to have you here joining us, and we're looking forward to a great conversation. Thanks.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, thanks, Marilyn. Thanks for joining us. You have definitely an awesome history in this world of passion we call motorcycles. How about we just started where you can take us back where you grew up and take us into that first introduction to motorcycles in your life.
Well, I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, PA. A lovely town to be from, though I don't ever want to live there necessarily again. I hope my family's not watching. But really, I did not grow up in a mechanical or motorcycling family at all, which, you know, has made me so jealous of those who have that opportunity. When I hear those kinds of stories of people, you know, a grandfather or a father or someone who put them on the tank to ride around the floor when they were 2, you know, that was not my experience. My main family, my nuclear family, was very unmechanical. My dear dad, an accountant and a lovely man, had no idea which end of the screwdriver to use. And
That's funny.
Don't know why I ended up having that kind of an interest, but I had to marry into motorcycling. So I worked in the printing industry for a number of years and met Dennis Stemp in that business. He was very creative, very artsy and mechanical. And he would ride his old shovelhead to work at the printing company. And when we could, we'd kind of take a little break in the afternoons or evenings, and I'd sit on the terrible little pad on that fender.
Yeah, we're not going to mention what that tab is, what they call that little pad. So.
Right. And that's really my first introduction to motorcycling was through Dennis, from meeting him at the printing company, and he rode that bike to work. And he was just an entrepreneurial spirit. He always was thinking of ways for us, once we were married and had a young family, what else could we do that was more fun than what we were doing? And he had started a number of businesses in his life, including motorcycle shops.
Nice.
So eventually, you know, I have a journalism degree from Penn State. Dennis, very graphic arts oriented and mechanically oriented. We'd sit around the dinner table thinking, what could we do? What could we do that's fun and interesting and uses our skills, you know? And somehow we honed in on a motorcycle magazine. This was in the late 80s, kind of deciding like that would be fun. And oh boy, we're not that far from York, PA. We could go out to Harley and borrow motorcycles. Wouldn't that be great? You know? you think of all the impractical things that you can do. And
Right, right.
nothing
That's-
like, how will we finance this thing? Who's selling the ads in the magazine? What do we know about distribution, circulation? Zero on all of those counts. But in '88, that's what we decided to do, is start a magazine about V-twin motorcycling.
That's cool. So with your experience in the printing industry and graphic design as well, did those really kind of set you off on the right foot to start IronWorks, to give you kind of a little bit of a head start?
Absolutely. You know, one of the best things about it was we could buy the printing. So we understood how to spec the printing properly and didn't pick the wrong trim size or, silly things like that some people without as much practical experience in that realm do. And Dennis handled our layout for us. So that was a large cost savings at that time as well. What did we use? Maybe PageMaker Pro or something at that time, and advanced with the software and our abilities to use it as time went on.
That's awesome. So
did you guys do a practice print and have, 80 pages all around your floor on your house?
Oh, yes,
I love
absolutely.
that part of the process.
Oh, yeah, I
That's
loved
so
it when
cool.
we actually got proofs you could hold instead of everything being on the screen,
Good show.
It's
And
always different.
yes, let me use those
Super cool.
proofreader
Thanks.
marks too.
So what was the concept behind, like, when you guys were at that dinner table talking about starting this magazine, IronWorks Magazine? What did you guys decide on how you were going to lay this out, what it was going to be about? Can you kind of get into that a little bit?
Yeah, and I'm so glad you asked me that, because we had this, we had motorcycle magazines that we read because Dennis was a rider. And, we had a young child at the time, and I worried about my family coming over and seeing the Easy Riders there on the table,
Right.
And we also felt like there were other riders like us who had families, and we didn't speak bro talk. We spoke in complete sentences, and that there were people who actually wanted a little more in depth, a little more, more about the machine and the lifestyle, maybe. And we also wanted it to be beautiful and aesthetically pleasing. And I'm not sure that, that was really a guiding tenet for a lot of magazines at that time.
For sure.
Sure.
This is a silly thing, but, back in the day when you'd read an article, you'd get to the second page and you'd have to go out to the back 80 pages later to get to the end of it.
Right.
We hated that. We never did that. We'd complete it all
Absolutely.
within that group of pages, and then you'd continue reading. And we put a lot of thought into how the magazine flowed and how it looked.
That's cool.
So for our millennial and Generation Z listeners, back in the day, when you would read a magazine, they would give you like a teaser at the front and then say continue on page 89. And that always drove me crazy too. I'm so glad you guys got away with
Yeah,
that.
there was no swipe right or swipe left. It was flipped all the way to the back. So let me ask you a question. When you guys got that going, what were some of the early challenges you faced launching it and establishing the magazine? And like, let's go into the challenges first, and then maybe talk about how you overcame them after that.
Well, I think one of the big challenges is we had no idea what we were getting into. And single title publishers, we had no experience with circulation, distribution. How do you get on the newsstand? Advertising sales, subscription maintenance. We had to learn all of that really from the ground up. And it was just the two of us initially. And then we realized we needed an advertising sales representative because, we'd start each day arguing. Oh, no, I made ad calls yesterday. Oh, no, you didn't. That was me. And so we knew that wasn't going to last long if the marriage was going to last, not to mention the magazine, right?
That's awesome.
So those were the challenges. And honestly, getting on the newsstand was a really large goal of ours, because you're really not a magazine unless you can be available in the bookstores and on the newsstand. But that's a very difficult process. And if you want to be in some large retail stores, they put you through a process where you have to be approved and that sort of thing. It takes a lot of time. And through those days, you have to keep printing your magazines, keep paying for them. And then once you get into the newsstand distribution, it gets to be 90, 120, 150 days before you're paid for that issue you paid the printer for 6 months before. So monetarily, it was a giant challenge financially. And we ended up developing an investor group, actually.
That's cool. That's cool. So at that time, when you guys were coming up, obviously the challenges where you talked about earlier about the motorcycle magazines for the Gen Z and the millennial generation, where most of the magazines that portrayed motorcycles inside of them always had nude pictures of women on it or inside the thing. So I think, and you guys launched about the same time American Iron Magazine launched, correctly?
Yes,
So it
we
was
were
really,
quite
it was really two of you that was kind of dedicated to that V twin world, the American motorcycle world.
definitely. And of course, we thought we did it better. We always felt like we spoke up to our audience. We encouraged people to share. We love digging out the stories of the more like the garage builder, not the famous ones.
Mhm.
We were lucky to feature a Donnie Smith bike or an Orla Ness bike on occasion. But, what we really tried to do was give attention to people who were out there working in their own garages and developing their own trades and skills and capabilities. What I really learned from that giant experience in 25 years was that everybody has a story and everybody's story matters. And that you just have to be quiet and listen, and people will tell you their wonderful lives. It's all just so very inspiring to know that, we all have some common pursuits that we follow. We approach them in different ways, and all of those ways are equally valid.
That's awesome. Thank you for answering that.
So I'm curious to rewind a little bit, but starting out and then going through the scaling and the growth process, I have kind of two questions. How did you learn what you needed to learn? And then also, how did your role evolve? What did you end up doing? And did you learn that you fell in love with certain aspects?
Well, as a journalism major, I loved writing and I really love editing. I love it when someone gives me this big mishmash of stuff and I have to turn that into readable,
Legible stuff.
accessible information, right? But that was a tiny part of the job. Running of the business is always the tricky part. And I think people find that out. Through the years, we've interviewed a lot of parts designers or manufacturers or bike builders. And what they've learned is what Dennis and I did, that the running of the business can be the thing that does you in if you're not careful. The thing you start
Mhm.
doing and love to do, which is making a really cool part on the English wheel,
Mhm.
might not be at all the thing that actually you need to know. So what
Right.
really saved us was the enterprise corporation that we worked with. Dennis made a presentation to a group of potential investors. They each had some skills we
Mhm.
didn't have. So when we got our group finally together, we had some expertise in accounting and distribution and ad
Mhm.
sales through that cooperative effort. And that's what really springboarded us. There was actually Inc. magazine came and interviewed Dennis and did a one-page article about him
Oh,
because of
cool.
that little consortium that we developed that moved us forward and kicked us into the next level that let us survive.
Wow. That's
Smart.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. So the magazine came to a close in 2014.
Yes, 2013 was when we knew it would close, and then we still had a couple issues in the pipeline that came out in 14.
Can I ask you a question? Like, what prompted that decision for you to close it and kind of move on from the projects? And I mean, you built this really cool magazine that motorcyclists followed, obviously, and bought and had subscriptions. Why did you decide to move away from it?
Well, I'll rewind a bit for you and take you back
Thank you.
to 2000 when Dennis was diagnosed with cancer, and then we kind of worked through a couple bumpy years of trying to bring him back to good health. And when he finally passed away, um, I had to make a bigger decision then to either continue without him or potentially end or sell the magazine. What happened then was that I actually brought in a publisher who didn't necessarily work in the motorcycle magazine field, but the principal at that at that company was a rider, and he had been a reader of ours, and he stepped up and essentially bought the title from us, and I maintained a consulting contract with him so I could continue I became the editor then, and I was able to continue the magazine for another 12 years, 13 years
Yeah.
on my own after Dennis passed. So it was the publisher, Hatton Brown, and me who partnered and kept the magazine going for a chunk of years. And then by 2013, the publisher had seen kind of the writing on the wall with a lot of magazines giving up print, and that's why they decided that they would stop printing, and I didn't have a lot of option there.
Right.
So
Right.
I had some other decisions to make at that time. Fortunately, my kids were grown, and it wasn't quite as dicey as it had been when Dennis passed, and that was a little less challenging. I just had me to worry about then.
Gotcha, gotcha. Hey, can I ask you a question? I've always been curious about this. Now obviously with social media and everything, you can find people in certain industries because they're always obviously posting. When you guys were starting out the magazine, how were you able to find the stories? Because that's so cool. Because I mean, you're basically targeting garage builds and all these kind of unknown builders that you're trying to showcase and show their work and things like that. What went into finding that? Because that's a tough thing to do at that time because there's not as much information out there on it, especially around the US.
It might surprise you to learn that we found subjects to write about then the same way, honestly, I do now, and that's by being places. I mean, as much as, yes, I can do lots of research online, going out among motorcycle people, being with them, meeting them, and seeing their work, that's what really inspires story and inspires research. So I don't really feel like I do it any different than how we did then. We go places, I'm always, my children get mad at me like, Mom, where are you now? But if you aren't places, if you aren't out and about talking to people, I don't think there's any real substitute for that. Us getting together here, on the screen is wonderful, and I love that we can see each other as we talk, but being boots on the ground among people is where the serendipity happens and where the
Right.
connections are made. So that's how we figured it out then, and honestly, it's what still fuels storytelling for me now.
That's awesome.
That is really cool. That's absolutely true. Boots on the ground. And that's so we all know as we finalize our shopping cart at the grocery store and we walk down the aisle to check out, it's one of the most depressing microcosms of current society where magazines that are still in print, minus maybe a National Geographic or something that has some substance to it, 90% of them now that are mass marketed are talking about celebrities or just absolute garbage. Or you have the funny ones like Jesus appears next to the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
But
Jesus
so
found with
it's sad
Bigfoot.
yeah. So it's depressing to see what's happened to
Yeah,
the
for
print
sure.
industry. But you had the foresight, and I'm curious to hear a little bit about trader news. And so going from IronWorks Magazine to Iron Trader News, tell us about that transition and how you're keeping the flame alive.
Yeah, it's funny. When Dennis and I were first thinking of a name for the magazine, we started out with Hog Trader News. And that's, we intended to be a kind of a classified ad magazine as well as storytellers. So when we first started our promotions about that, I think we got the most response from Harley Davidson's trademark division,
Right. The hog. Yep.
telling us we couldn't
Jeez.
be that related to motorcycling. So we changed it to Iron Trader News. And we used that title for the first 6 issues of the magazine. And it was a small format magazine, 6x9. But when we wanted to jump to the newsstand, we had to go to large formats. So we made the change to IronWorks. So
That's cool.
when IronWorks went away, I went back to Iron Trader News. Excuse me.
No problem.
So that's how it was originally titled. Okay,
Yes.
cool. That's some cool insight. I had no idea.
Yep. So it made sense just to go back to that. And I still owned that trademark. So made it easy.
Cool. Does it differ as far as content from the OG magazine?
It does.
What's the focus of? Yeah.
It does. It's it's a little I don't have the staff that I did then. We used to have a group of freelancers that we worked with, and a bigger budget. I had a nice editorial budget that I don't have now. And
Yeah.
so mostly what I do with Iron Trader News is keep it as an aggregator of motorcycle information. So I have a webmaster I work with, and a nice platform that's very easy to manipulate. So it's constant updating as opposed to, every 40 days or whatever that was, when we did the magazine.
Right.
So it's forefront all the time to what do I want to share and how do we share it. But it's also easier in some respects because everything is not written over. We do share press releases, new product information, once we vet that it's legitimate.
Gotcha.
So,
that you're saying basically at this point, are you by yourself with Trader with the news part of it, or do you have others? Like how does it work?
it's mainly me and my webmaster. The two of us manage it together. He is a photographer that for many years shot feature stories for me, Jack McIntyre. And he's got a huge library of materials that we can use for features. And he's also very savvy about the manipulation of a website and how that all works.
So how did that impact the content and direction of the publication? Like you went from the magazine to this. What was that transition like for you?
Oh, it was a learning process, and I think it still is. But I guess I'm just a little feisty and persistent. When the change happened with IronWorks, I didn't really want that to happen, so I just became determined to keep my foothold in some fashion. So it was a learning process.
Awesome.
First, maintain that I had that trademark and I could use it. Go ahead and get online with it immediately. Start developing it. Start building the website, and flushing it with content as quickly as I could, and then try to keep
Awesome.
it current. So I still feel like I learn every day with that. We tweak it and we add things. A couple of years ago, we actually added an across the pond segment. Met a writer from
Cool.
north of Paris, and he gives us the most amazing articles that, places I'll never ride to. So it gives us a broader scope.
From around the world?
Yes.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So
That is really cool.
so people can see the different cultures, the different ways, and that's amazing. Great.
Yeah. And then I have a woman that I met she's actually from Russia. I think she's living in Italy now, but she'll write us articles from some of the foreign events that she covers for us. And then we have, even a broader range view of things that are happening in, Switzerland and Italy and England and other places she travels to. So between Paulina and Hervé, we have a nice international input.
That's cool. Good for you. That's the way to do it. Spread it all.
That is really cool. With a career like yours, and thinking about what you said about boots on the ground and meeting people, and that's where the best stories seem to come from, you have to have a really cool highlight reel, I would imagine. Can you tell us some of your like most fun or favorite memories and highlights?
The one thing that sticks out to me is the first time I went to Daytona on my own after Dennis passed, and I had to this was a fact-finding mission. Could I really do this without him, or did I want to? And it was in Daytona Beach, when Beach Street was still a very active aspect of the rally. And all the big rigs would park at the Cadillac dealership down from Carl's Speed Shop, and there was an Oil and Nest store there and lots of things in the Riverside Park. And I was pretty much afraid to kind of wander out there on my own, but, you've got to stick a toe in the water and you have to, give it a shot.
Yeah.
So I went into that venue at the Cadillac dealership and looked across the parking lot and saw two people, Frank Keisler, who theoretically should have been a competitor of mine. He was the editor of Hot Bike, I think, at the time, and Donnie Smith, the bike builder. And the two of them just kind of walked toward me. They saw me, and they walked toward me. And I wasn't even sure they knew me. I knew that they were friends of Dennis's, but they kind of made a beeline for me, and each put an arm around me and said, "We've been thinking about you, honey, and don't worry, it's going to be okay." And honestly, that's something that impacted me and made me think, if I give this up, I'm going to be sorry.
Yeah.
And then,
Community.
yes, huge community that I didn't even realize I had. Kind of
Wow.
a whole pile of friends there holding me up. And probably a second one was when something very similar, Howard Kelly and Dave Withrow, I think they were with, maybe Howard was still the hot bike editor a number of years later. Dave Withrow was the publisher from Maverick, later did Urban Bagger and a couple of other magazines. Ran into them outside an event that Corbin, Barnett, and PM and Sampson, I think, used to do for the journalists in Sturgis every year. And I arrived late, and I think that was like a self-fulfilling thing. Oh, if the doors are closed, I won't have to go in. That would be rude, And so these two guys were always late everywhere they went. So I turned to see them, and they were coming down the hall. Marilyn, that door right there, go in that door. And I said, "No, that's okay, guys. It's rude to enter late." And they literally just dragged me in, and figuratively as well, dragged me back to the industry. So this is motorcycling to me. I mean, the people that should be your competitors, I mean, there's enough stories to tell for all of us.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think we all know this. And so when the people like that drag you in and insist that you stay, I mean, it just it was an eye opener for me, and I've never regretted it.
So cool.
That's
so
awesome.
cool.
Yep.
Hey guys, the show will be back in 1 minute right after a word from our sponsor.
Hey, One Gang, tired of feeling like your butt's taking more of a beating than your bike on those long rides? Introducing Butt Buffer, the ultimate solution to saddle soreness. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. These cushions are made from medical-grade viscoelastic polymer, scientifically crafted to eliminate pressure points and keep your circulation flowing. No more numb nuts or numb butts. And here's the best part. Butt Buffer cushions are made right here in the U.S. for the last 30 years. From Harleys to Hondas, we've got a cushion to fit your ride perfectly. Plus, with styles ranging from sleek pebble polymer to luxurious sheepskin, there's a Butt Buffer for every rider's style. Get your Butt Buffer today at buttbuffer.com. That's buttbuffer.com. Your butt will thank you, and you'll ride longer and happier. We've got your butt covered.
For sure. So then you get into the Sturgis Rider Daily, right? So now we're going to I wanted to ask you, I know that you're on their committee and you're in charge of the special events, right? So kind of talk a little bit about the Sturgis Rider Daily and how that came about. All right. And then we'll go into the second question after. Let's get into the Sturgis Rider Daily. How did that all start?
Yeah, it was shortly after IronWorks wrapped up, a couple of months actually. I go to the Donnie Smith show every year in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and it's coming
awesome.
up this next weekend. And that particular year, yes, the magazine was gone and things were different. And I went anyway because, you're going to keep covering the events you've covered forever. And ended up sitting with a couple of folks from the Chip, including Woody. And someone threw out the idea of, Woody, haven't you always wanted to have a daily newspaper during the rally? Be the only campground in the world with your own daily newspaper. And he said, oh, yeah, that's something I really want to do. And they kind of looked at me. And I said, yeah. They said, why don't you try and do this for us? And so that's how it came about, very organically and without intent necessarily. But it morphed into producing a daily newspaper on site at the Buffalo Chip during the rally. And, honestly, it was a job that a woman my age had no business taking because I think it nearly killed me each year. But I also would finish it each year and agree to do it the next. So I don't know. There's obviously something wrong with me, or my level of pain is just very high. I don't know.
How did you put that together? Like, how did you decide how you're going to do the content of this magazine or this publication?
Well, of course, it's based at the Chip, so you want to cover their events.
Everything
and the
there,
marketing team, the team at the Chip that does their marketing is very savvy, and they have, tons of things lined up. And, it might look like controlled chaos, but it's very controlled and organized. I mean, it's an event they plan for all year long. So we know a number of things that will happen on given days at given times. So I could do a lot of that in advance and kind of, fill out the template for each day ahead of time. and then leave those holes open for the serendipity that came along or the follow-up that needed to happen or things that we might not have expected to happen that did. So just a juggling act, really, and so much fun.
It is. It is a lot of fun. It's a wild place, man. That's for sure. I've been there twice, so I know from firsthand. So it's definitely a fun place.
Yeah.
That's cool. So I'm dying to know about Evel Knievel. So your management with the collection and your involvement on the board. Can you tell us some about that?
Oh, he was my hero. He was one of my heroes when I was growing up.
Yep. I always could tell if somebody does this to me.
Yep,
It's
yep.
that right.
That's right.
That
That thing's
winds
worth
up
a lot of
toy.
money now. The original one, that thing's
The
worth a lot of
originals.
money.
hmm And again, Ben, that was just kind of a happenstance. I had booked a trip to the Mecum auction in Las Vegas the January after IronWorks wrapped up. So midnight, New Year's Eve on 2013, the magazine ended. A couple days later, I already had the trip booked, so I went to Mecum, Las Vegas. And in the hall, among the vendors, were some Evel Knievel things. One of his bikes, and
Sweet.
a man named Latham McKay was there with this memorabilia he had brought. And George Sedlak was with Latham, who was a painter. And, because I'm kind of nosy and curious, I ended up just talking to the two of them and learned that George had been Evel's painter back in the day, painted a lot of Evel sheet metal. And Latham had started this collection, just kind of a passion project about a year before. He just decided he was going to find everything Evel Knievel that had been dispersed all over the country, all over the world, pull it all back together and make a collection out of it.
Wow.
And so he
So
was
cool.
such a fascinating character. We spent a lot of time talking, and over the next few months, I learned that, as creative and spontaneous as he was, there wasn't a really strong foundation there about where everything came from, um, how much was paid for it, the source, and just maintaining the collection. So I sort of wormed my way into just helping and then eventually earned percentage ownership in that fashion. And so over a period of 3, 4, 5 years, we ended up building the collection, making it larger, running out to chase after stashes of things we found and pulling it all together. Latham lived in Austin at the time. So that became kind of a base of operations for a while. And then we started to exhibit the material in a number of ways at motorcycle events, racetracks, just whatever came up as a way to kind of monetize the collection.
Right.
And at one point, we had Latham had located the truck. What was it called? Big Red, Evel's
That's right.
tractor trailer, and we had moved it to somewhere in eastern PA that was going to refurbish it for us, and that was looking a little scary, like it wasn't going to work out. So we ended up meeting Mike Patterson, who owns historic Harley Davidson in Topeka, Kansas. And Mike was maybe 3 when his grandfather took him to see Evel jump at the Kansas or the Topeka Fairgrounds or something. And so always a fondness for Evel. And when he heard that we had the truck to be refurbished, he jumped right in. He had tons of resources. I think we went on shipping wars with Rob. Oh, Rob's last name escapes me now. And ended up getting bids to move the truck from PA out to Kansas. Got a little publicity for that. And then had all of these wonderful resources through Mike to completely rebuild that truck and trailer. And it's in the museum now. But a year or 2 after it was finally finished, we had it on Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood for the premiere of the Evel Knievel film. And it was just one of those crazy moments. You're like, how did I ever get here doing this? With George Hamilton standing there. And
Wow,
it was
that's
just very
cool.
strange.
That is cool.
And that's, we're right now working on moving the collection to Las Vegas. So that's the next big project. I'm trying to take things back to Evel's kind of spiritual home where Robbie lived for many, many years and where Evel's son Kelly lives now. So
Mhm.
I think
Yeah, I
once
was
we
going
do
to ask
that,
you, you got a chance to get to know the family a little bit going through all this?
Yes, yes. Evil Knievel Days in Butte, Montana was an event that the family and friends and colleagues of theirs had pulled together for a number of years in a row. So once we had the collection going, Lathan actually became good friends with the family and then brought me in on that. And we would bring our collection there to display for Evil Knievel Days and got to know them through that. They were always gracious hosts and welcomed us to come and, I'm sure it was fun for them to see everything again.
Of course, of course. I saw the documentary on Evil Knievel, and like he was a pretty focused guy in regards to he was more of a showman than he was should we say a great father, you know what I mean? So
Mm.
but it's still an interesting story of everything else. So it's cool that you got a chance to get to know the family a little bit. Um Now you've been inducted into the Sturgis Hall of Fame, Las Vegas Hall of Fame, and receiving the Stride Inspiration Award. Uh, those are absolutely remarkable achievements on your part. How do you reflect on these honors and like, basically almost not thinking of you're not going to continue doing this after Dennis's passing, right? To now
Hmm.
all of a sudden really being recognized as somebody who's gone through this journey of decades in this industry. How do you reflect on that? Like, in your career and stuff from almost quitting to now?
Oh, I guess initially it's gratitude. I wake up every day grateful for everything that motorcycling and the industry has given to me. I've always felt like I lived my life telling the story in the background and taking the photographs. And it's not a real comfortable place for me to be out on the other side of that. I really don't like to speak in front of groups. And probably only in recent years did I think that every once in a while, maybe I should get into a photograph so that someday my kids
People.
can say, yeah, mom was there, because I really haven't ever done that through the years. But yeah, I'm just super grateful for that. And I feel like maybe it says there's a place for telling the story, and for maintaining our history and for pulling together the important things that have happened in the motorcycle world because, we know some of the most amazing characters. I mean, I'm sure you all have met them through your podcast. The people in
Absolutely.
our business, they come from all walks of life, and some of them have done crazy, remarkable things that, we might think would never fit into a real life. But I don't know. I never imagined being in that kind of group of people. So I just feel lucky and grateful most of the time.
Well, I mean, we were so excited because of your journey, but I think you're such an inspiration, in my opinion. Um, not only to the community, but I think to a lot of females coming up in this community, that may have that thinking of this is a male dominated community, but it really isn't. This community, yes, there's more males in certain things that they do, but it's really like we're one big family. Of course, you got everybody, you've got your people that are but for the most part, the 99% of us are pretty good people. So they accept you. So it's awesome to see what your accomplishments and it's great to hear the story for sure.
I'm super excited about all the young women that I run into, at AIM Expo, for example. Just about every booth had a woman in it, representing a company, being present in some fashion, speaking, demonstrating. It really inspires me to see women stepping up now in
Yep.
so many different realms. Industry wide, yes, and, in a company fashion, but also in hands on ways. Um, Down in Daytona at the Sons of Speed Racing, there was a gathering the Friday before the races that Northern Tool and Equipment had 50 plus high school kids who were in shop programs.
Wow.
And there were some young women in that group, and I talked to a couple of them and they didn't feel like they shouldn't be there. Their confidence level was so inspiring to me. They weren't skulking around the back of the group. They belonged. And, that's an attitude that maybe didn't persist, for women of my era.
Right.
We felt like we had to ask
Right.
for the grace of presence. But I just love
Mm.
seeing women these days jumping in and taking their place because they belong and they have skills and they can do it, whatever it is. So I'm inspired all the time by Jessie Combs and Teresa Contreras and lots of these women who weld and paint and aren't afraid to
Right.
show what they can do.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's really cool. So your contributions go outside of motorcycle publications like Gloria Struck's memoir and the custom vehicle operations book. And I'm curious if you could tell us how you've balanced those and if there's anything else that maybe I didn't mention that you've been involved with as far as projects go.
The CVO book was perfectly timed. It came when, I was kind of piecing together this new career after IronWorks went away. So that was such a gift that came my way through Motor Books International. Darwin Holstrom reached out to me. So that was perfect timing. And, it looked so beautiful when it was finished. And I had access to look through Harley's archives to suggest some photographs for it.
That's
so
cool.
it's a great
Wow.
experience,
Wow.
just really fun. And Gloria's book was she talk about characters. She had such a storied life. And she is a woman who rode when it was not at all common. And she, she wasn't treated well all the time. There were people who felt like she shouldn't have been there doing that. So, her story is certainly one worth pursuing and reading about. And so much of that book is her own words. And she was so sure she didn't need an editor. And, I think everyone needs an editor, especially the editor, right? So, I mean, I say that about myself. Somebody should edit me very closely. Thank you. But working with her and getting to know her was also a super fun experience. And I keep telling her she needs to write the next book so we can work together again.
Yeah, I got a chance to meet her at the St. Augustine show. She was, I think at that time, this was back in 19, so she was probably like 96, I think, right around 95, 96 at that time frame. So, I mean, she's a whippersnapper, man. That woman is sharp as a nail. So I got a chance to chat with her a little bit, and we had Buzz Cantor from American Iron on the show too, and he had mentioned that she made him promise that when she turns 100, that they're gonna do a cross country trip together. So he's like, "My God," she goes, "She's gonna blow right past me," because she's got so much spunk. So it's awesome. I wanted to ask you a question. You live half the year in Sturgis. How have you fit into this community, the Sturgis community, through the year? I know during the motorcycle time, but you live in North Carolina half the year and then Sturgis half the year, correct?
That's right.
Tell us how it is living in Sturgis during the non-motorcycle time.
Well, when it's before rally, it's a lot of work because, we're building up to this plateau. And as it gets closer and closer, it gets a little more frenzied. And the chip now does some other events on site as well. So they get on Adventure Fest and some other races and things happen in advance. So there's more happening there even in advance of rally time. But once rally ends, I think South Dakota, the Black Hills is just about my favorite place on the planet in late August and all through September. I mean, it has snowed there the first week of October, so you really got to keep an eye on what's happening. But it's just beautiful and lovely. And, if I would tell anybody, if you want to ride the Black Hills, come in September.
Right.
It's just absolute perfect time. So, yeah, that transition has been interesting. I guess it's 5, 6, 7 years now. I've been going back and forth, and I always feel like I'm ready to leave one place and anxious to get to the other when it's time to do that, either direction.
Understand.
So I guess I'll keep doing it while it seems like it feels good.
Have you had a chance to meet the governor?
Actually, yes. We've been super lucky to have her come out to the chip the last few years. She's a writer and she's very
a writer,
inspiring. Yeah. And so she actually came out last year. We were approached by folks from Fox News to do kind of their breakfast segment. I guess they do a diner segment.
Yep.
And the Buffalo Chip Pancake Breakfast became the breakfast diner that Wednesday morning. So, of course, they're East Coast based. So 6 a.m. on the East Coast is, by the time you take those 2 hours off, the challenge was to get a couple hundred people in place in the dark having breakfast at 4 a.m. So when they came to us from the East Coast, we were ready with Lawrence Jones and the governor. And oh gosh, that was a challenge.
That's cool. That's cool. That's a good story.
That is really cool.
But we did it.
You did it. You managed.
Yeah.
That's a tall order. So I'm curious, as a moto journalist, with your insights, what trends do you foresee that you think will be impactful to the motorcycle industry in the coming years?
Yeah, I think about that sometimes, especially my magazine was V-twin oriented. And I always feel
Right.
like, that was my niche and I was super comfortable there and got to know a lot of the builders and parts manufacturers in that realm. But, working at the Buffalo Chip has certainly enlarged that. And Iron Trader News is not V-twin specific. So I've become, much broader minded. Uh, uh, Everything is two wheels, and it really doesn't matter what you ride, it's that you ride.
That's right.
And however you come to that is, a personal preference, but it doesn't affect the vulnerability of any of us on the road in two wheels. I mean, we're all facing the same thing. I often
Absolutely.
think that of passengers as well, that they're equally vulnerable, if not more so, because they have no control. So there's a young woman who I've worked with on kind of in a support two-up capacity, where a passenger
Hmm.
really has some standing as well as the pilot of the bike. But in terms of trends, yes, I see it just a broader acceptance of more marks, more brands, more styles of riding. So adventure riding and um, I'd say more women in the industry is a very good thing. More women riders.
Absolutely.
And something else, and maybe this is wishful thinking on my part, but I love the fact that I think we're growing back to an appreciation for the skilled trades. That, my shop class went out of fashion and really out of existence for a long time. And I think that's a travesty because not everybody wants to go to college or has an
That's right.
interest in something of that realm. And, we all know how well, I revere a metal worker or I watch a pinstriper work and just blows my mind how someone
Artists.
has that ability.
Yeah.
I feel like we are finally coming back to an appreciation for craftsmanship and and to the point where we are now including these as options for careers for people and pathways to a fulfilling life, a fulfilling career path and lifestyle. So I hope I'm not making that up as a trend, but I personally
Yeah.
feel like
Yeah.
we are more broad-minded
Mhm.
and more open-minded about the trades and the arts and custom culture art.
Yeah, I hope so too. I love what you're saying. I just hope that it is guiding that way because I feel that young men and women, very few, their concept is college, even though they may not be college material. And there's so many great trades out there, and the skills that you need, you can make 10 times the money going into a trade than you could graduating college with some, liberal arts degree or something like that. So I hope we trend that way, but it's tough when they kind of cutting budgets and stuff like that for those types of programs. But let me ask you this: what advice would you give an aspiring moto journalist who's kind of looking to get into this industry, to make an impact in this industry, just based on your experiences, your journey? What would you tell somebody that you wish somebody told you back when you were starting?
Hmm. I would say probably the best advice I could give would be just go, just be there, be places and see what unfolds. And don't be afraid to tell a longer story. I think I get desensitized by headlines. You think you know what's happening because you've read a headline, but there's a place for longer form journalism. And I think people will stay with the story when it has some meaning or some impact or, they can relate to it in some fashion. So if I was starting out
Great
again to
advice.
do this today, I'd have to again kind of be talked into the fact that like motorcycling is a real industry. No kidding. And but once if you love it and you follow it and it's something that you're passionate about, there are lots of ways to make livings in motorcycling.
That's
I
right.
think there are many pathways you could take. Um, my pathway to write about it was more, just serendipity and happenstance than intent. I could have written about anything, I suppose, but just don't be afraid. Get out there and do it and create some content and create it in your own voice. So, you're not uh, it's okay to reveal some of yourself when you're telling that story.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome advice.
That is great advice. So tell us about current projects. I know you're involved with the Flying Piston Project and Iron Lily. So tell us about what you have going on and how people can stay in the loop with you.
Yeah, so Iron Lily is a group of folks who are planning a film about Lily Farrow, who was one of the two original founders of Farrow Harley Davidson. I think they go by the longest family-owned Harley Davidson dealership in the world. Lily and her husband started it. He passed away fairly young, and she kept it going, as well as her children and her grandchildren. And so her story is inspiring from lots of points of view. And I think really want this film group to get off the ground to produce this story and lift our industry up. I think it has a way to kind of carry us all forward. So that's a project I'm delighted to be involved with from just an advisory capacity on a board with a group of really wonderful women friends that participate in that, like Jill Parham and Chris Simmons and, I'm blanking, Tigra and Gail. So it's a great opportunity for all of us to support the industry, and that's ironlily.com. You can learn more about that.
Yeah, we'll put a link on that. Yep.
Yeah, and then Flying Piston Benefit is an effort I started about 10 years ago, thanks to my friend Jeff Nager, who came up with this idea that we would get custom builders together and try to raise funds to support our industry, to develop new ridership mainly, and to support some veterans and military efforts. And so 10 years ago, Woody at the Chip invited us to have our breakfast event there. And this will be our 10th year in Sturgis. We just completed our 4th breakfast event for the Flying Piston in Daytona, initially with Ross Myers and now with Teddy Morse HD, the new owners there in Ormond Beach.
Yep.
And essentially what we do there, we have a breakfast, we pull everybody together, we do an auction with a lot of custom culture arts, skateboards and growlers and toolboxes that are painted by all kinds of really talented people that are auctioned off. And then we also have little Strider bikes or Stasic e-bikes that we send out to custom builders, and they work their magic on them. We bring them back in and we auction those as well. And the money that we raise is mainly going to All Kids Bike. All Kids Bike puts bicycle training programs into kindergarten PE in public schools. So from my point of view, we are putting kids on 2 wheels when they're 5 and 6 instead of waiting till they're 15 or 16, right?
Sure.
So I see it as a longer timeline, but I think perhaps a worthy one to try to get new ridership in the industry.
Let me ask you a question before we get into the speed round questions. Where can people find you? What social media platforms are you on? That way we can link everything to the show.
IronTraderNews.com is, of course, the website for my blog. Iron Trader News has a Facebook page. My regular Marilyn Stemp Facebook page gets as much attention as that does, I think, sometimes. Also on Instagram, Iron Trader News and Marilyn W. Stemp on Instagram. Those are the channels I use mostly.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for that. All right, so you made it through the questions. Now you're ready for some fun?
Okay.
Ben's going to wrap away 15 questions. We'll time you, and if you fail and you don't make the 2 minutes, you have to write a full article on the One Gang Worldwide podcast.
Okay. I'll try to fail.
All right. Awesome. Okay, so first question, what's your favorite motorcycle you've ever owned or ridden?
A Buell Blast.
Nice.
That was easy to answer. Sweet. Here's a fun one. If your motorcycle could talk, what would it say about you?
Ride me more.
That's awesome.
Best place you've ever ridden and why?
Oh, one morning between Pittsburgh and York, PA, Dennis and I were riding 2 up on the way to trade out one motorcycle for another from the factory. It was crisp and cool and the perfect morning.
Nice.
That's awesome. That sounds like a great memory.
Yeah.
What's the most embarrassing song on your playlist?
Probably Pharrell Williams' Happy. I love that song.
It's a great song.
If you could time travel, what era would you travel to and why?
I'd like to go back to England and figure out who Jack the Ripper was.
That's awesome. Cool.
Classic
first.
British
Favorite
murder
motorcycle.
mystery, right?
Yeah, man, for sure.
Oh, 100%. Favorite motorcycle movie of all time?
There was a film called Indian Summer that very few people saw that I thought was just beautiful. And if nobody could find that, I'd probably say World's Fastest Indian then.
Nice. Yep.
But
A lot of people choose that one.
All right. Who was your movie crush when you were a teen?
Well, my TV crush was Bobby Sherman.
All right.
And I don't know if anyone even knows who that
I
was
don't know who
anymore.
Bobby Sherman is.
He had a
Yeah,
couple
it's racking
terrible
my
albums. He was on the cover of Tiger Beat magazine, as I
Tiger
recall.
Beat. That's
you go.
funny. That's awesome.
And of course, George
All right.
Harrison.
George Harrison. Okay,
Classic.
great
There
one.
you go.
Yeah.
Nice.
As the quiet Beatle, I figured my chances were better. You know, fewer girls liked him.
That's funny.
So if you could, let's see, if you could have dinner, if you could meet and have dinner with any figure from history, who would it be and why?
Maybe Henry James or E.M. Forster. So it would be a British writer or philosopher, like one of those guys who was
Excellent.
very thoughtful.
That would be an interesting dinner. So what's one law you would change if you were president to impact and help the motorcycle community?
Right to repair. I don't know that there's a law against it yet, but I think it threatens and it really worries me. We have to be able to alter and modify our motorcycles and keep them internal combustion run
Yeah,
as
for
well.
sure.
So those are a couple concerns I have that I think our motorcyclist right organizations are working on those things for us. And I would commend anybody to find a motorcyclist rights organization and support it. I don't even care which one it is.
Yeah,
Just get
we had Kirk Willard on the show, the president.
perfect.
He was on the show. Yeah, he was on the show. He's a great guy, man. And what we learned so much. It was amazing. Yeah. He's a fighter. That whole organization does a great, amazing job for us.
For sure.
Amazing and terrifying. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Pay yourself first. So that was from my dad. You know, when you get your first paycheck, make sure you hide something away and save it for the future before you go out and blow it.
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, I think my dad gave me that same advice. Here's a fun one. If you could get up on stage, or it doesn't even have to be on stage, but if you could sing along or jam with one band in history besides the Beatles, who would it be?
Probably the Allman Brothers.
Oh, good one. Yes,
Classic.
nice.
Yeah.
Absolute classic.
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right, if they made a biker-themed movie about you, who would play you?
Oh, gosh, pity the woman. I don't know.
Come on. You're too hard on yourself.
Maybe Gloria Struck.
Oh, Gloria
There you
Struck.
go.
All right, that's cool.
I would be
That's
honored.
Aw,
Yeah, and
classic.
I'm not a great movie fan, so I don't immediately, like a lot of actors, actresses come to mind for me. So,
I would say Meryl Streep.
oh, well, her initials are the same as mine, MS.
That's right,
So there
that's
you
right.
go.
There you go. It's meant to be.
Yeah.
So, do you have any silly superstitions before or after you ride?
Nope. Nope.
Solid.
I really don't. I don't think there's much to that kind of ritual. I think that things are going to play out as they do, with or without my intervention.
Amen. Not that they do anything, just
Right.
knocking on the fender or whatever. This is a custom question. What's your favorite story you've ever written?
My favorite story?
Whether it be in article form or any kind of publication, what's the best thing that you've covered? In your opinion, I'm sure that's so hard to answer.
No.
What's one of your favorite?
I had to start writing a column in the magazine after I was the editor, and I dreaded it and I loved it. it would hang over my head. You know, I'd put it off to the last minute sometimes, and other times I would just get the spark of something to write about. And so had occasion to reread a couple of those lately when I was at the National Motorcycle Museum when Jill was closing down the museum, and there were a couple old copies of IronWorks in the office, and I read a couple of my columns, and I thought, wow, I used to have something to say now and then, you know? I actually had a point of view.
Right. It's got to be a trip, right? To get some old magazines that you haven't seen in years and then to read them, go like, hey, I wasn't half bad. You know, that's cool. That's awesome. Because you're always your worst critic in the beginning because you're going through it. So you're changing things and you're thinking nothing's right. But then you read something, 10, 15 years later that you wrote and you're like, hey, all right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
One of those was
All right,
about
last question.
oh, I'm sorry. I was
No,
going to
go
tell
ahead,
you
go
one
ahead,
of
go ahead.
those just about my daughter's
one of those.
first tattoo. And I was distraught that my beautiful 18-year-old daughter went out and got a giant tattoo on her back. And then,
Defaced her body.
yes, it didn't even ask permission because she didn't have to anymore, right? But
Yeah.
it was actually a picture of her father's hand and a V-twin, a shovel head engine in the hand.
Wow.
And so, think about that on your daughter's back, him kind of resting a hand on her back for life. So that was one of the columns that it was just so satisfying to write.
Wow. So awesome.
Wow.
Hey, are your kids involved in the motorcycle industry one way or another?
My son worked with me on the magazine for a number of years, and he rides. My daughter's a field biologist, so.
Oh, wow. Cool. Cool. That's cool. Is your son still in the industry or is he doing something different?
He still rides, but he doesn't do that for a living anymore.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Does he get a chance to get the VIP passes in Sturgis with you, or do they no? You don't take advantage of that? Please adopt me, please. I would love to be able to hang with you during because you do all the do you do the bands and all that stuff? Are you part of that?
No, I'm not. Really, Woody and his son Damon make all the decisions for the bands, and they keep that pretty close. They have the agency, I guess, that they've worked for a number of years, and they have it down to a science now. They don't really need my input at all.
They get some insane acts. I mean, that place is jam-packed for 2 weeks straight, so that's cool.
Yeah. So Marilyn Surge just sabotaged you and took up time for your speed round, so there's no way you can hit the 2-minute mark.
Oh, sorry.
I did it on purpose. I did it.
Nailed it.
That's awesome.
So the last question, and I might change the question. Do you listen to any podcasts? The question is, besides the One Gang Worldwide podcast, obviously, what's your favorite podcast out there, or a couple of your favorite ones?
I used to love the S&S Performance Times podcast when Dave Zemla and John Montgomery did that.
Yep.
And so that would be one of my go-tos when I'm, driving long distance. And Motorcycle Men, I've listened to that a couple of times.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, and then I just like some non-motorcycle ones too that I listen to.
Me too.
When I'm stuck in the car. Yeah. I love podcasting generally. It's a great innovation.
Yeah, it's fun. It's especially if you got a good interview and then the story just kind of organically flow, and it's nice. It's good to hear about people's journey. That's kind of like what we're trying to do is we're trying to bring a community closer together. And like you said earlier, it's not what you ride, it's that you ride. So we're trying to get, the Harley guys to understand the sport bike guys to understand the cafe guys, and everybody just have one journey and be together and support each other. And, this whole generation that we're a part of now is all about separation and division. And Ben and I, we had discussed this and we said, no politics, nothing. We just talk about the good and the things that people are doing that's influencing this community in a positive way. And that's what the One Gang Worldwide podcast is really all about. So.
Well, good. I so appreciate you guys inviting me to be with you. You've made this really fun.
Us too. We had a blast and it was a great day. Your history is amazing. So just keep up the amazing work that you're doing. We're going to follow you all the way through. So, and we'll link everything for our listeners to be able to get to you as easy as possible for everything that you do. And if it's cool, maybe after the Lily documentary is done and all that, maybe have you back on and kind of talk a little bit in discussion about that and how that's, how how everything journeyed through that in this upcoming year, if that's okay with you.
No, it'll be my pleasure. Look forward to meeting
Awesome.
you both for real
Awesome.
somewhere.
We will for sure.
Absolutely. Daytona's an easy one. We can get there in a heartbeat.
Okay, great.
This is awesome. Thank you so much, Marilyn. We really appreciate your time, and this has really been a fun conversation. We appreciate you. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.